People's Food Co-op is your neighborhood grocery store owned by 12,000 of your friends and neighbors. They serve high-quality foods, natural products, and support local farmers, featuring organic produce, meat and seafood, house-made bakery, deli, and more. You don't have to be an owner to shop. Learn more at www.pfc.coop. Prevention is the key to a healthy life. That's why Gunderson Health encourages you to learn about vaccines and how they can help you and your loved ones stay healthy. Vaccines protect against preventable diseases and viruses by boosting your body's defenses. Visit GundersonHealthFacts.com to learn more. We get into it with Nick Roesler. We chat about Ghosting a Funeral, his genre-defying instrumental debut album, working with Dave King and JT Bates, and playing with Porcupine. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, weekend picks, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
I'm Nick Roesler, born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I got an old guitar from my grandpa in like fourth grade, and they offered some group lessons, and so that was kind of the first instrument, and then sort of took the path of, band, played trumpet in school, and continued on through college, played in a few original music bands in my teens in La Crosse. So that's kind of where things began.
Besides kind of the band, the kind of traditional instruments, I think that all children kind of pass through and you kind of stuck with it, sounds like. Yeah. Was there music in the household? Were, parents, interested in that sort of stuff? Were they inundating you with tunes, or was it a quiet household?
They were supportive of music, but not really extensive record collections or anything like that. I mean, there were a couple of albums around. I remember, I think there was a Led Zeppelin album in the house, and otherwise it was sort of radio, sort of whatever was on the radio we listened to kind of growing up. Yeah.
Was there some go-to albums in those younger years, or?
Well, once I discovered jazz, or at least for myself, because sort of I got two tapes. One was a best of Blue Note, Miles Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Another one was some kind of a best of Louis Armstrong. And so that was somewhere, I don't know, maybe middle school years or something, and I kind of got hooked on Miles Davis after that. And sort of the idea of, before that, I played music on the page and sort of, okay, this is what you do. It's more of a exercise, kind of mechanical. And then I'm like, oh wait, they're improvising. What is that? And so I played those tapes all the time. And then as a teen, maybe even before, Nirvana Nevermind was on repeats for a long time. And that sort of got me dabbling in guitar for, actually, after that sort of early experience with acoustic, bought an electric and started doing that. So yeah, I think in some ways, actually, music that I was discovering then early on almost kind of influenced my parents in a weird way. Like, I would bring things up. They're like, like Dave Matthews Band comes on the scene, and my mom's like, oh, I kind of like this. So interesting.
Being a, local from La Crosse, basically, I grew up at the Warehouse, and I saw, Casey's first band, which is Space Bike, or one of his first bands, way back when I was in my early teens. Now, in some ways, they've changed and progressed into Porcupine. What is your connection? Have you always been a fan of Casey and his music, and now you're part of that, or what's the history behind it?
Yeah, very, very similar to yourself. As a teen, I remember seeing Space Bike play at the Warehouse, and I thought it was so cool to have an original alternative rock group in my hometown. There really wasn't a lot like it, and at that time too, I was playing in this band called Smoke Bomb, which we did sort of ska music, and there were a couple other locals there. So we played at the Warehouse and sort of looked up to bands like Space Bike as sort of like, this is sort of, what to aspire to, right? And kind of got to know Casey over the years when he was working at Dave's Guitar Shop, sort of just going in, look at guitars, talk about music. And after a while, I had started recording the stuff at home on my own, and always looked up to Casey and his songwriting and his, guitar stuff and on all that. So gave him a CD with just a bunch of musical ideas, and hey, what do you think? And he was just like, wow, this is great. Like, so that, yeah, kind of fortunate to have that friendship built, and where we are today, playing together, and Porcupine kind of joining the band about a year and a half ago, almost coming up on 2 years, I guess. Just, it's been great. He played in one of my bands over the years, something called Chicane Theory. So it was just a 3-piece. He played bass, so and sang backup vocals there too. And I played in a couple of Porcupine albums, just additional guitar along the way, just on a couple tracks here and there. So he tried to sneak me into the band a few times. So I appreciate that. But yeah.
I'm pretty sure I remember Smoke Bomb. I mean, you guys would play bills together, wouldn't you? In shows quite a bit. You were quite a regular, right?
Yeah, we did some. I was thinking back to those days, and I was just like, wow, all these like makeshift venues, and I remember playing like above Pearl Street Coffee, and it was like, and after we played, they're like, yeah, actually, that was violating a bunch of fire codes and stuff. So you shouldn't have done that. But yeah, so that was fun. It was like, it's kind of a small group of bands doing original music. Yeah. And we'd all just sort of band together and be like, okay, well, where can we play?
Did you guys ever play Mr. Jitters over by UWL? Do you remember that place?
Yeah, it was right on, what is the street there?
Now I think it's Green Grass Cafe. But
yeah, I can picture it. Yeah, it had like this big window in front, and sort of the stage was makeshift. So we did a gig there. And then there was something called the Z Space, which was like over, I think, 4th Street maybe, or across the street from Rifles.
Oh, okay.
Above, I don't know what it is now. I'm disconnected from La Crosse, but yeah, it's all these like kind of temporary venues that aren't around today. It's like, okay, we'll play there and charged $1 at the door or something like that, and get a bunch of people in. And it was fun. I mean, it was sort of exciting as a teenager too. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember seeing Everclear, right before like Santa Monica video was just coming out, and they played Warehouse, and that was pretty big. Warehouse was great, and we played with a few. Smoke Bomb was kind of unique. Like, we didn't really have one genre, but we had a few songs that were ska kind of leaning, but we'd have some funk stuff or kind of metalish or whatever. But there was a band called the Blue Meanies from Chicago that I remember playing with, and they're ska punk, and it was just amazing to have bands like them. They weren't like household names, but it's a different era too, because it's like, you wouldn't go and stream stuff or look at stuff. It's like, oh, we heard of this cool band that has horns in it. Like, all right, we'll play a gig with them, and then hear them in soundcheck and be like blown away of like, wow, what is this? Like, so it was really cool.
You're releasing an album, Ghosting Funeral, which is, I want to know about the name. It's instrumental debut album. It's ambient, like you said, jazz, electronic. Where did that come from? Have you always kind of been meddling with the knobs or something, or how did that all start?
Yeah, I like playing with echo pedals and sort of soundscapey type things, right? So throughout the years, just sort of, I've got my own recording set up, and I've kind of always had the ability to record at home and just sort of record little bits and pieces of information, and not really even songs, just like parts or something, and just sort of get lost in a section of music. It was 2021, kind of height of COVID times, more isolation and whatnot. And I think a lot of people are sort of looking introspectively and going, purpose of life, all that stuff, not to get too deep, but I thought to myself, I call myself a musician, but am I making music? Like, can I, or am I a person that can play instruments? Like, so sort of that year, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to get back into it and complete music and complete songs. So I ended up taking a few Zoom lessons with a guy named Dave King, who's a great drummer who founded a band called the Bad Plus. And he's been in a bunch of other groups and played he's got a super impressive catalog. He's not only an amazing drummer, but a great composer and writer as well. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a few Zoom lessons with him just to kind of try to, just focus in and kind of keep me accountable, focused on writing new music. Right. So that really helped push me. And he is, I guess, one of his mindsets is, do music that's authentic and that you like, and like, don't always think, oh, I want to write this song for an audience that's going to be kind of tailored to this. And so I really took that to heart. And right at that same time, I was interested in baritone guitars, but I had never played one or purchased one. So I decided, I'm going to buy one. It came in and I started just writing music with that. So it's kind of a combination of focus in music, getting the boost from Dave King and talking about composition and stuff like that. And then also having this baritone and really kind of coming into my own that way, or these songs just sort of took shape from that. And one of the tunes on the album, Hall Light, was like the first thing after I got the baritone. I started noodling around and, some music came out. So yeah, and in terms of like, instrumental and jazz back, it's not necessarily jazz music, but it has some of those sensibilities in there. I think that's coming from some of my jazz background and trumpet playing, but yeah, it's sort of just taking everything that I know about music and like about music and going, I'm not even like, is this a rock song or what is that? Like, I'm just going and just like seeing where it leads. And so that was sort of mindset or strategy for the songs. Continuing to take the composition sessions with Dave King, he's like, man, this is really good. You got to make an album, and we're sort of talking about that. And I said, hey, would you drum on it? He's like, yeah. So that was also kind of gave me a boost of like, hey, here's this guy who's just a world-class musician, right? And it's like having him go, sure, I'll do that. And so kind of the backstory and how those songs started to take shape. And at the same time too, I've been more and more interested in like electronic sounds, electronic music, so sort of sound effecty things. And so I'm like, well, how do I blend that in there? And so try and take, elements of things that I love and just sort of put them together. And that's, really a representation of the 9 tracks that are on Ghosting the Funeral.
So was that a relatively quick process? I mean, to go from taking these pieces that I would imagine predominantly you've done, alone, and you're kind of, including Dave King, looks like JT Bates was helping out as well. Like, was it an easy process, or did you have some of that improvisation sort of thing come through as well?
Yeah, essentially what I did was I recorded kind of demo versions of the songs, and then we did a drum session, which was amazing. It was all done in one day, actually a partial day. And so JT, yeah, he was the engineer. And so I was surprised because Dave King goes, I got a friend of mine who's got a space that we can record drums in and it'll be great. He had done some other work there. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And then beforehand, I just was like, okay, well, should I touch base, get the files and get all that sorted so we're not like having some kind of technical difficulties. And so call up and it's JT Bates. I'm like, oh, okay, I know who you are. He's a great drummer too. And so, yeah, essentially Dave he did his homework ahead of time, listened to the tracks and just rolled through. I mean, some of those are first or second takes, not even listening to the track ahead of time and just going, oh yeah. And just boom. Like I was floored. The musicianship and I think he's a really good listener. He does some free jazz stuff. And so it's just like, you're constantly listening to what people are doing. And sometimes people think free jazz is just like, oh, I just can play like, yeah, just go crazy. And it's like, no, yeah, maybe some approaches that way, but yeah, I was kind of blown away. So it was a pretty straightforward process, actually. I mean, just having that high level musician in Dave King kind of play along with some of the demo things. And so then after the drums were solidified, then I went back and retracked some things. That started, I think the drum session was in November 2021. So then I took a couple months to sort of chip away, retrack some stuff. And then it was mixed in maybe March or April timeframe of 22 and mastered then soon after. And then I started seeing if there would be interest from labels or otherwise, just trying to think about, well, what do I do with this? It's kind of a unique record in terms of audience. Again, I didn't really write it to be like, oh, I want to be in the radio or something like that. So it's like, well, what do I do? So I took a while to sort of figure out, okay, well, finally just landed on, I'm going to self-release and just get it out there in the world, kind of see it as a foundational piece, and just excited for people to listen to it.
Not to put you in some sort of category of it, but I mean, I see similarities to bands like, Explosions in the Sky, Godspeed, Black Emperor, with a lot of the instrumental sort of sounds.
One of my influences, it's not really a direct thing, or maybe people wouldn't hear it, but there's a band called The Life and Times who does more heavier rock stuff, but they have a very spacey kind of vibe at times. And I think it's a lot of kind of that ethos that I love, and sort of try to incorporate that. And yeah, I was listening to a lot of like soundtracky type things as well, and just trying to be like, but you're right, Explosions in the Sky, and there's other bands too. And even it's not a direct thing that you would think of either, but like there's a electronic artist, Tycho, who does instrumental stuff, and it's more, there's more synth and it's maybe a little bouncier or whatever. But yeah, just that's kind of some of the stuff that I was listening to at the time, kind of drawing some influence. And actually, so there's a guitar player named Ben Monder who is now in the Bad Plus with Dave King, and he's got a very atmospheric, spacious kind of sound, and is a master of chords and also melody too. And so Dave kind of turned me onto him before he joined the band even, and he said, oh, check out a couple of these tunes. And so he's got an album called Amorphi that's amazing, that I listen to a lot. And so it was hard for me to like, how do I label this? What are the genres? And so I sort of, a bit of a cop out is to call it post genre or genre defying.
I totally get the soundtrack idea, in some sense, kind of storytelling. So where did Ghosting a Funeral, where did that title come from? Even Midlife Bison I found to be interesting. I like the names.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of those are, I just have a random thought on something and I think, oh, that sounds cool, or it's kind of ironic or funny in some ways. And with instrumental music, I think you can get away with that more than stuff with lyrics. Is like, well, you don't want to have some like oddball title and then the song's nothing about that, right? You can kind of make it the title anything. But yeah, Ghosting at a Funeral, I mean, at first the song was just like, it was a kind of a line shaping exercise where I took a series of chords. I think there's like 14 chords, and the exercise is to just write a single line under that. And I did that and played it for Dave, and he goes, just as an exercise, right? And he's like, I think this is a piece, and I was like, oh, really? And so I don't know, I thought it had kind of a ethereal, kind of spooky vibe to it. So I was like a ghost something. I'm like, ghosting, and then the darkness of a funeral, and sort of this, I don't know, kind of ironic idea of showing up to a funeral and leaving, and then also sort of juxtapose that with like the idea of ghosts being present at a funeral or something. So I don't know, just sort of random, kind of having fun with it as well.
In terms of, we kind of, I think we chatted about before we started recording, but you're not necessarily going to be touring with this album, but you, of course you wanted to get out there, right? Or are you going to try to do a show or two? Or
yeah, initially I thought, well, maybe I could try to do a release show or something. At the same time, there's a lot going on, focusing on new songs with Porcupine. We're active. We just continue to play a few times a month, or got a big show coming up at Summerfest. But so yeah, it's sort of like I was trying to find the time and the effort that it would take to sort of work up the set. I thought about even trying stuff solo, sort of with samples or other things. I mean, I'm not super crazy about like playing along with backing tracks, but I mean, maybe something like that. But if for now, I'm just kind of want to get the music out there and enjoy that, and maybe down the road see if, do a live show or two. Originally I think it would be fantastic to do something with Dave King, being that he's obviously on the album, and would be great. And then also, just to be honest, like it's a unique blend of music, right? So, what venues will be like, yeah, that's great. That's going to pack the place. Like, so I'd like to, it's fun to play live. I think this one might be complicated to make it happen, but yeah, we'll see kind of in the future. I'd like to do that.
So where should people go to pick this up or take a listen?
All the streaming platforms. It'll be, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music. Bandcamp, of course, is kind of the most direct kind of indie source if you want to purchase a download or whatever. That's it, the spots. I've got a website, nrgalaxy.com, that'll have information there as well. So yeah, it's available, basically streaming everywhere.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.